For people who don't know, Joel Anderson hosted an award-winning season of Slow Burn when he worked at Slate, and they're the podcast series about the Tupac and Biggie situation. And therefore, he is a foremost authority on Diddle. And Diddle was acquitted of many charges. Well, there's 5 charges. He got busted on 2, but the 3 big ones Diddle got acquitted on. Like Dave Chappelle, like he is in enormous trouble. He is on the RICO by himself, which apparently a line that rang true with the jury because he managed to beat that one. I didn't pay that much attention to the actual trial, right? But I did notice all the salacious details were coming out, but I didn't feel like they were making what seemed to be their biggest point. And you tell me if I'm wrong here, but the biggest point seemed to be that they were trying to allege that Bad Boy Records or whatever his company is actually was simply a front for Freak Off LLC, right? Like that's the whole idea of racketeering is that your business presents as one thing, the Jinko Olive Oil Company from The Godfather, right? You present your business as one thing when you're actually doing something else. And now that I look back on it, I think we got a little caught up at the time, but I'm like, yeah, that was a pretty ambitious legal attempt that they made there.
I mean, who else did they? I mean, the thing is, they didn't bring anybody else up to sustain that. Okay, what I was running this other business, we were doing this instead of, we had our hands in all these other businesses and doing all these other things. Like that's not something that ever was sustained in court. And I heard one of the jurors came out and talked about that, and they were always they walked in skeptical of that as a claim. Like one of the alternate jurors has been talking in the last few days, and he said they walked in skeptical of that charge in and of itself, and the prosecution never really proved that. And so that's one piece of it. But also, I think the thing is that, and this actually kind of surprised me, that same juror said that they actually got to watch some of the footage of these freak-offs. Yeah. He said it was very tame. A lot of people rubbing each other in baby oil. It's not like it wasn't like hardcore action or anything like that, allegedly. And so that was another thing. They're like, well, this is a very tame bit of theater here. And so you bring all of that all together, it's like you didn't really have Diddy with his fingers doing all this other stuff, sort of trying to wash his money or doing anything else. And you have the actual footage of the stuff that is allegedly so bad, and it seems fairly tame. And maybe that's because, we live in a world where you can see hardcore action pretty much at any time. It didn't seem like the prosecution was able they overreached a little bit. And I think everybody has said that. They still got him. I mean, he still could face up to 20 years in prison.
Oh, I didn't know he'd get that much time.
Oh yeah, he could still get 20. He could still face 20 years. But it's just in terms of like the big overarching charges, the racketeering and all that other stuff, like that kind of fell by the wayside. Yeah, the trafficking. That didn't hold water once.
Yeah, I think it's a trick bag on these things where, and I understand people who took the verdict as people don't believe the victims, and I didn't get that feeling from what I was checking out, right? It seemed to me to be a little bit more of a question of, but is this what you say it is in terms of the law? Right. And if I'm wrong, somebody can feel free to correct me because I don't want to invalidate anybody's experience or anything like that. But I did not take that as people don't believe that Diddy did the things that they said he did. I think they wound up with stuff where you got text messages and stuff where an alleged victim seems to be organizing the event, then it's hard to convince 12 people that this is a Stockholm syndrome sort of thing, which seemed to me to be what they was trying to go for.
Right. And I think that's the thing. It's like some people can take things, especially when it comes to the law, you can take things too literally, or you can just not be disabused of your priors. And so it's difficult to explain to people in court that sometimes victims might fall in love with the people that abuse them, right? And they may want to do things to make them happy and to keep them, to keep them docile so they free themselves of abuse or whatever. But that doesn't mean that they weren't abused. But in terms of the law, you can understand how that could be very complicated in convincing a jury of 12 people, 8 of them men. You could understand how they might look at that and be like, well, he's clearly a bad person, a bad partner, an abusive partner, but that's not what he's on trial for, really.
Yeah, and then that was interesting that his lawyers were like, he's a domestic abuser.
He's a violent man.
Yo, you are in deep doo-doo when you start by specifying that. Where they're like, look, there's no point in lying about that. You saw it. He be swanging.
Yeah, right. He's that's the thing. And actually, Bo, this is because I think a lot of people, like, as we get to the end of this, like whenever his sentencing is going to be, but sort of like the reimagining of the Diddy image. Like, if you look back 30 years ago, like, nobody was really talking about Puffy as a violent or bad person, right? Like, they were saying he was maybe a shady businessman or whatever. He had not done right by his artists, but the idea that he was sort of a guy that, you know, was cruel and mean to people and everything else. Like, even the first time that he popped up in the news with the city college party that ended up with 9 people getting killed there. Like, it was like, oh, it was an accident. Like, how could I have known, you know, we had that party and, you know, unfortunately we didn't go by whatever the standards were and people got hurt and killed, but like, it was a mistake. The shooting that involved Shine and J-Lo, it was like, oh, you know, that's not, you know, I wasn't really involved with that. I didn't fire the gun, blah, 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 blah. But nobody thought of him as a violent person. But like, when you think about when you add up all these incidents over the years, it's like, oh, like, this dude is actually a bad person though. Right. I mean, I feel comfortable saying that. Like, he's not a good dude. And so, yeah.
I'm sorry. In line with that, there is the best example of this is Hammer, right? There is a joy, and I'm not saying, let me get to what I am saying. I don't want anybody to aggregate this, so we be very clear about what I'm talking about. There is a certain joy that we get in talking about cats that you might not have known is a little bit gangster with theirs. And MC Hammer is at the top of the list, right? Where like Redman talked about that. MC Serch talked about how they had to sit him next to Michael Jackson at the American Music Awards because Hammer was trying to have him touched. Yeah. And the only place that he could be safe was in the seat by Michael Jackson. And we're like, yo, Hammer a gangster. People didn't know it now, but cats in the game knew he was a gangster, and they kind of talk about it like with a chuckle, like, oh yeah, y'all ain't know? Y'all don't want to wear Hammer. Nobody talks about Puff like that or even talked really about him like that then, but they all knew. Like, it wasn't like the cats in the game saw him as, hey, you need to leave him alone because you might have to fight. It seemed like Cam and Mace, when they talked about it on their show when it first came out, and Cam talks about how Mace did not walk him up to Bad Boy. And Mace is saying, you know, basically, I can't remember which one of them said it, but the two of them are saying he wanted to take him by somebody who would do right by him, right? Like, that tenor was there. But even then, nobody was like, man, I told y'all Puff ain't nobody to mess with or nothing like that. Nobody's saying it. No one, that's not the tenor that it comes up when people talk about him.
Yeah, it's interesting because Suge kind of like hinted at the fact, like, I know that there's this perception of me as the big bad guy and that I'm the gangster or whatever, but like Puff does bad stuff too, right? But like, nobody kind of thought of it in that way. And also the thing is like, the dudes that really give off gangster in hip hop never really talked about, like, Suge and 50 kind of like clown him, man, like this whole time. Like, they were not really afraid of him, but for people that did not have an equivalent amount of power or influence in the game, Puffy was somebody that they had, like, man, like Mark Curry, man, like Mark Curry, who was on his label, right? Like, talking about the things that he did and the way that he treated people. Eugene Deal, who would talk to anybody, man, you know, like his former bodyguard, has talked about the ways that Puffy did and treated people. But it was like he was really good at taking advantage and hurting people who could not hurt him back. And so that's the thing, I think.
What was the Mark Curry book title? Was it called Dance with the Devil?
Dance with the Devil, yeah.
It is worth a read. Like, I read it. It goes off the rails at the very end of the book. But it, especially now, because I read it before all this kind of had gotten out there, it's a really interesting read because the point that he makes and that other people make is everybody that was on Bad Boy either ended up dead, in jail, or in church.
Bro, I mean, Craig Mack, Biggie, yes. Black Rob, who died strung out. Yes. I mean, just think about all these folks, man.
G-Dep went and walked to the police station and told them about a 10 or 15-year-old murder just because the guilt was eating them.
Yeah, man. I mean, but man, people see Mace up there alongside Cameron, and they may not, you know, they weren't there in 97 to 98. I mean, that dude was a huge star, and he walked away from it all. I mean, that's how much of a toll being under Diddy's employ did to him, man. I mean, Day 26, Danity Kane, like all these other folks, man, like they were really scarred by having an affiliation with this dude.
So this is, you know, there's not so much legal analysis to get in, right? Like, it goes like it's more about where it goes forward. Now, he need to watch out because the judge can do whatever it is they want to him at this point, right? Like, you know, is he probably going to get the 20? Maybe not, but there's nothing stopping him from giving him, let's call it 5. And 5 years in federal pen at that man's age, he might need to get up on his dean. You know what I'm saying? They give him a little bit too long. He gon',
Yeah.
Salam alaikum, brother. Like, you gonna need to, he gonna come out that motherfucker looking like Frederick Douglass with all that gray hair, and all that, however it goes. But I have heard people, let's say he doesn't go to jail, right?
Yeah.
Let's just throw that out there as a hypothetical. Let's say they give him time served.
Yeah.
And he walks out.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen people make the argument that, and I think that there's a certain resignation and cynicism in this, the idea that he could do that. And then, there'll still be people that'll stand next to him. I don't know about that. I think that the idea of cancellation, people think of that in such absolute terms. And there will be some places that he can go, but he ain't coming back to where he used to be. Right? He's not just going, he's going to be like, remember, OJ got acquitted. And OJ thought he was just about to pull up on the white folks in Brentwood like nothing ever happened. And they were like, hey.
Not our bag, brother. Yeah. 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 It's funny you said OJ, because that's exactly who sort of comes to mind. And I mean, at this point, what are you going to stand next to Diddy to do? Right? So in terms of like his influence in music, we're talking about the last time he was you remember people when you were a kid, people talk about Berry Gordy, right? And it was like, man, Berry Gordy was a big deal in 1968. That's Puffy to a lot of these kids today. So like, so even if he gets welcomed back into polite society.
But hold on, though. If Berry Gordy pull up to the Source Awards, they was going to let Berry Gordy into the Source Awards.
That's fair point.
Right?
That's fair point, yeah.
And let us be very clear. Puffy is not in OT Berry Gordy. Like that's let's get to the bottom of this, right? But I'm not even thinking about the kids. I'm thinking about his contemporaries. So let's take it to a different event, right?
Okay.
You think he gonna get to come back to the Rock Nation brunch? I don't think he can.
Of course not. No way. Jay-Z is like pretty. People that have not done anything remotely close to what Puffy has been alleged to have done. So yeah, no way he's getting invited to that.
You also got to remember this part, right? Like when it comes down to the application of his reentry into whatever form of society that you wish to discuss, there is all the terribleness that he engaged in, right?
Yeah.
Certainly. There's also the story that he would be watching the freak-offs in another room. Right. And so the freak-offs would come to their conclusion, and he would have Cassie take some of the fluids and bring them to him so that he could rub them on his nipples in the other room. And I'm telling you right now, they ain't letting that back in the crew. I think it is a fair point to make that men are far too tolerant of violence against women, right? Mm-hmm. They don't stand up on these things. And I can see why people would think, they're going to let the cat back in. But that man was exposed as a deviant in ways that I think will make it very, very difficult for him to come anywhere else.
What did you say? Come to where?
You didn't have to do that.
Okay. Anyway, I agree that kind of, but the thing is, man, a lot of these cats kind of seem to know, right? Like maybe they didn't know to the extent of that. I don't think
they knew that one.
Right? Because the thing, so you've seen that video of, because 50 Cent points this out all the time. There's this video of Puffy at a table. It's like Noriega and some other dudes, and Fabulous is there. And Fabulous is talking to Diddy. It's like, hey man, so when we gonna party? When we gonna hang out? And if you could just see Fabulous like tense up, get real, like, yeah man, I hung out with you for one of my birthdays. He's like, no man, I'm talking about when you go party with me. When you go party with me. And like Fab is like all tensed up. And I was like, I kind of feel like the rumors of this stuff has always been out there. And you know what I mean? So like
well, hold on. Well, that raises another question.
Yeah.
How many cats who were not under his employ was out there running with him in the first place?
That's a great point.
Right? Like who's, after Big died, who was Jay-Z to his Dame Dash or whatever? Ooh. I mean, I guess maybe after Shine, like hanging out with Puffy, you might go to jail.
You're right? Yeah.
But like there wasn't no freaking frack out here, like cats, I guess, were just going to the parties.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I mean, a lot of people went to those parties, and I mean, it's funny because the only people that I've seen say, "Hey, I want to go to a freak off again," are Chopper. You remember Chopper from the band?
Oh yeah, I do remember Chopper.
Yeah, Chopper was like, "I would love to go to a freak off again." Now maybe he wasn't there for all of the, maybe he missed that part. He wasn't in that room where that exchange was going on with Cassie or whatever. But a lot of these cats that are in the business, I kind of feel like some of them were in those rooms already, and they just didn't want to talk about it. So, but to your point, he ain't never gonna get welcome to the Grammys again. He ain't never, whatever this new 106 in Park gonna be or whatever, he ain't gonna get invited on that. Like maybe, but the thing is, you can kind of carve out a lane for yourself if you're shameless enough on the internet. Like anybody can just kind of start up their own thing, and people will want to hear. I do think people will want to hear from him, and there are enough people that hate women and resent this powerful black man being held to account. I think that depending on how Puff wants to play it, there may be an audience for him. It won't be what it was, but it could be something.
But I think he has one problem. He's not very interesting. Remember that time he said something interesting?
Man, that's a good question, man.
So like, for example, and I'm not saying they are similar in the context which we're discussing, but like that 50 Cent is an interesting guy who says interesting things.
He's a very smart dude. He could tell he's a very smart guy too, by the way. Yeah.
Yes. Suge Knight even used to say somewhat interesting things, but I ain't listening to his podcast from the jail phone. You know what I'm saying? I'm not doing that. Like, so I guess you're right, but I don't know. I think Diddy. Okay, so let's think about it this way, right? After what happened with Rihanna, Chris Brown immediately tried to like roll into the I'm still a fresh-faced kid, right? He's showing up doing interviews looking like Orville Redenbacher, like all that to try to sell. And then we're like, partner, not working. And so he turned into the Chris Brown that he is now.
He got on his Black Mamba. Yeah.
Yeah. When a rich brother wants you and your man can't do nothing for you, right? Like he became that guy. I don't think that Diddy can/will make that turn, which is kind of what you have to do to lean into the idea that you're talking about. Right. What Diddy aspires to be is completely different. Like I think Chris Brown, deep down in his heart, always wanted to be like a gangster type dude in LA. Diddy, when everybody, like when he was putting his people in Tim's and all that stuff, he was putting himself in suits. Right. Like he and Jay-Z aspired to be something else and wanted to go to that place. So, like, when people like, let's just say he gets time served and he gets back off, they're like, nothing happened to him. No, don't you worry. He's feeling some pain, right? It ain't the pain that in our carceral society that we think you're supposed to have, but he ain't got no money, as I recall.
Right. I mean, that's the other thing. Like, a lot of those, like, brand sponsorships and things like that. Like, it ain't like he owned that tequila company. Like, he was just the face of it.
Yeah.
Right? And so, yeah, I'll be curious to know how he's able to make money, like going forward. Like that, I don't think he's gonna be broke, but like, you know how Dame Dash is kind of like, well, like
hold on. What? But he is broke.
Who?
Is it? Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't like, did he stacked up all that money? What was it for bail or whatever? But remember, his money was not great.
Right. It's not
when this came up.
It's not what people think it is, and he's gonna be further. So, yes, What will Diddy do? That's the thing, man, though, bro. Like, he really cares about money, though. Like, I mean, so you did talk about the point that he wanted to be seen as a businessman, but all of it was an ends to getting paid. And, like, money was really important to him. And I feel like if that's an ethos, and this is something the judge even said, like, yo, like, he comes up here and he's still not, like, he was reaching out to witnesses while he was detained. Like, he was breaking the law while he was under investigation, doing stuff. So, like he's got some sort of an edge. He still likes that sort of life. And so I'm just wondering, somebody that is that addicted to the lifestyle, somebody that has only known comfort for like the last 30 years of his life, I feel like that kind of cat will be willing to maneuver to do whatever it takes to still like have some sort of income coming in. I just don't know what that is.
Yeah,
it ain't like white people want to see Diddy. You know what I mean?
Right. We'll see.
He don't mean nothing to them.
Right. So that's just the thing. And to be clear, I think this is something that gets lost, and it is somewhat fascinating to me. White people don't stick with their black favorites past, like, it's just some shit they do when they teenagers. Like, there's some exceptions, certainly. Right. But the people who could sell 10 million copies. So MC Hammer, as a great example. MC Hammer was selling records like NSYNC was selling records, like Justin Timberlake was selling records. And no matter how much clowning people did, people love those records, right? Mm-hmm. MC Hammer can't do no arena tour around America. Oh, and look, he got three albums and more worth of hits.
Yep.
He could put together, I mean, it wasn't my jam, but I saw y'all wearing them pants. You know what I'm saying?
I went to the MC Hammer concert in 1990, man. You know, it was dope.
Yeah. But MC Hammer played halftime at basketball games.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like they don't come with us on this. There are a couple of exceptions, maybe, but like it isn't a lasting thing for white people with their black acts. And so somebody like Puffy, so when it's time to do the Bad Boy reunion tour like they did or whatever, and Bad Boy was a big, giant deal, and all those people sold lots of records, that is a BET Awards affair.